Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a case that just completely defies logic. It's a mystery that starts out with a totally mundane drive home, quickly spirals into a parent's absolute worst nightmare, and leaves behind a chilling void that, honestly, remains empty to this very day. I want you to really put yourself in the shoes of Brian and Annette Swanson for a second. It's the pitch-black night of May 14, 2008, out in rural Minnesota. You get a frantic call from your 19-year-old son. He needs your help. So you drive out into the dark to find him, staying on the phone the whole time to guide him towards your headlights. But you can't find him. You're looking, you're searching, and then, without any warning at all, the call just abruptly ends. Okay, let's dive into this timeline because it really acts like a ticking clock. Brandon was a 19-year-old college student just celebrating the end of the spring semester at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. A little before midnight, he leaves Canby, Minnesota, heading out for the 30-mile drive home to Marshall. At 1:54 a.m., he calls his parents. He's accidentally driven his Chevy Lumina into a ditch. Now, he isn't hurt, thank goodness, but the car is completely stuck. He tells them he thinks what follows is 47 agonizing minutes. Think about how incredibly long that is when you're in a panic. For 47 minutes, Brandon and his parents are on the phone together. They're both flashing their car headlights, desperately trying to signal each other in the dark, but neither of them can see the other's lights. Finally, getting frustrated, Brandon tells his parents he's just going to leave his car and walk towards some distant lights he believes are coming from Lind. He tells his dad, okay, just meet me at a local bar's parking lot.
During this long, dark walk, Brandon is communicating his entire sensory environment to his dad. He's cutting through fields trying to save time. And you have to picture this. It's an incredibly isolated, eerie setting. There's just the crunch of gravel under his feet, the rustle of him climbing over fences, and the distant sound of running water somewhere in the dark. It's just a young man, a cell phone, and the pitch-black void of rural Minnesota.
Then, at roughly 2:30 a.m., mid-conversation, Brandon suddenly interrupts himself. He just exclaims, "Oh, shit." And then, complete silence. The line goes totally dead. His parents hang up and frantically call him back, over and over and over again. But there's no answer. He just vanishes. From that exact second onward, Brandon Swanson has literally never been seen or heard from again. Desperate and terrified, Brian and Annette wait for sunrise and immediately report their son missing at 6:30 a.m. to the Lynn police. But the response they get is, frankly, shocking. They're basically told, hey, it's not unusual for a 19-year-old college student to stay out all night. According to Annette Swanson, an officer actually told her that as an adult, Brandon had a right to be missing. And because of this, they were forced into a standard 24-hour waiting period before an official search for a missing adult could really begin. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the geographic anomaly that completely turned this whole case upside down. Later that morning, police finally obtained Brandon's cell phone records. Brandon had told his parents he was near Lind, which is about 7 miles southwest of his hometown, but his cell phone actually pinged a tower near Taunton that is 25 miles away in the completely opposite direction. He wasn't even close to where he thought he was. So following that new cell tower ping, authorities finally locate Brandon's car. It's on a rural gravel road near the Lincoln County line. It's basically just hung up on a roadside incline, just enough so the wheels couldn't get any traction. No severe damage at all. The doors were wide open and the keys were missing. They found the car, but guys, that's where the trail impossibly ends. In a field of dry grass and gravel, there were absolutely zero footprints. A 19-year-old vanished from an open field without leaving a single solitary trace around his vehicle. Law enforcement literally had no way to tell which direction he even started walking. They bring in the search dogs, including a highly trained bloodhound from South Dakota. The dog picks up a 3-mile scent trail. It leads down these field roads to an abandoned farm and then straight to the banks of the Yellow Medicine River. Now, at this point, many naturally assumed he must have just slipped into the cold water in the pitch black and drowned. But the dog's path did not end in the water. The scent actually showed he entered the river, crossed it, climbed out the other side, and continued walking north until the trail just vanished abruptly at another gravel road. Over the ensuing years, an astonishing 122 square miles of terrain were searched. To put that into perspective, that is a massive, massive area of land. We're talking helicopters in the sky, boats dragging the river, ATVs scouring the dirt, specialized teams of dogs, and hundreds of volunteers walking the fields before planting and after harvest in this massive, truly frantic effort to find him. So, The crucial point is, how does a 19-year-old vanish into thin air without a single physical trace left behind? No clothes, no cell phone, no remains. Despite 122 square miles of searching across a decade, there is no evidence of foul play, but there's also no evidence of a drowning. He simply disappeared. You know, while the physical search yielded absolutely no answers, the emotional toll on the family was compounded by how that initial investigation was handled. Annette Swanson's frustration was just palpable. As she later said, "I'm his mother, and I knew something was horribly wrong." She knew her son wouldn't just vanish intentionally. The fact that the legal system forced them to wait, treating a young man in clear danger as someone just exercising a right to be missing, was completely unacceptable to them. Let's move to and see how this builds into a lasting legal legacy, the creation of Brandon's Law. The Swansons took their unimaginable grief and channeled it straight into action. They were determined to fix the system that had failed them in those critical early hours. Before 2009, the protocol for missing adults included that rigid 24-hour waiting period we talked about. So the Swansons worked closely with State Representative Marty Seifert to draft new legislation. They wanted the law to treat missing adults under dangerous circumstances with the exact same immediate urgency as abducted children, and the result of that effort was Brandon's Law. Brandon's Law radically changed the mandates for law enforcement. If a person is reported missing under dangerous circumstances, the investigation must start immediately, completely regardless of their age. Furthermore, it requires prompt notification of all neighboring agencies, and it clarifies exactly who the lead investigating agency is. In Brandon's case, because he unknowingly crossed county lines in the dark, the initial search was severely hampered by confusion between 3 different sheriff's offices. This new law eliminated that red tape. This bill actually passed unanimously in the Minnesota State Legislature and was signed into law in May 2009, with Brian, Annette, and Brandon's sister right there in attendance. Representative Seifert reflected on it years later, calling it one of the most important bills he ever authored. He stated plainly, "It will save lives," and it has since inspired similar protective laws in at least 4 other states. But while Brandon's legacy clearly lives on in the law, the personal tragedy remains unresolved. For years after he disappeared, the Swanson family kept their porch light on all night, every single night. It was a beacon of hope against the dark reality that their son was still out there, somewhere in that vast Minnesota landscape. We know for sure that Brandon's Law has ensured no family will ever again be told they have to wait to look for a loved one who is in danger. But as for Brandon himself, we are left with an abandoned car on a gravel road, a frantic 47-minute phone call, and a final, terrifying exclamation into the void. Out there, in those 122 square miles of rural Minnesota, what really happened in the dark?